Ladies and gentlemen, live from the West Coast, it's time for Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Your inside look into combat sports.
Ring Talk Live Worldwide is brought to you by the World Boxing Council, the WBC.
And now, the host of the longest-running fight show in radio and internet history.
I rode with him. I know what an idiot this guy is.
Pedro Fernandez.
Hey, Pedro, how you doing? And good evening to everybody out there listening to the show.
Damas y caballeros, bienvenidos, ladies and gentlemen. Coming at you from the multi-million-dollar sports byline studios. Check it. This is Ring Talk Live Worldwide, your inside look in the world of boxing and world MMA. Today, of course, we will talk in depth about Jake Paul. Why? Because Jake Paul is a YouTube sensation that has captured people that want to go to boxing matches that probably wouldn't go to boxing matches if Jake Paul wasn't fighting there. I'm serious. Last night, of course, he took on Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz has been on the show in the past. Of course, the brother of Nick Diaz, the notorious brothers out of Stockton, California, of course, in the world of mixed martial arts that caused that riot on CBS television about 10 or 15 years ago. Of course, that sort of stopped MMA being on CBS every other Saturday night. They're trying to do twice a month or once a month, something like that. But the bottom line is CBS said no to MMA after the Diaz brothers went crazy. But last night, Nate Diaz is not a boxer. I mean, he may have started out a boxer. He was actually a wrestler, but he may have started out a boxer, but he didn't look too good last night. I mean, Jake Paul is not the greatest fighter in the world. He didn't look like he was in greatest shape. He looked like he was a little bit fat. We'll get into that in depth a little bit later. We'll also talk today, of course, about the fact women's boxing deserves to be recognized, without a doubt, but it deserves to be 2-minute rounds. When I say 2-minute rounds, I mean, look at the Amanda Serrano Hardy fight last night. Of course, what I'm talking about is that they got slow and sloppy about 5 or 6 rounds in. Now, imagine if those were 3-minute rounds, okay? I mean, it would have been slop fest. So anyway, they were just like doing that kind of throwing. They were fighting like girls. Ooh, should I really say that? Yeah, and I meant that. I'm not talking about girls nowadays. I'm talking about girls like 35 years ago. They were fighting like Ali would say, they were fighting like washwomen. Oh, did I really say that? Yes, they were. Because at one point in time, they just both got tired. So imagine if there were 3-minute rounds and not 2-minute rounds. Straight up, I think 2-minute rounds is good for female boxing. This is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. My name is Pedro Fernandez. Welcome to the show. After the break, we'll go into depth, of course, on boxing and the world of mixed martial arts. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide on Sports Byline.
Rubén El Púas Olivares es para muchos especialistas en el tema uno de los 10 mejores boxeadores mexicanos de todos los tiempos.
Y lo prendió Olivares, trata de irse hacia las sogas, iba a caer, pero las sogas lo detuvieron, está golpeando a 2 manos. Olivares
explosivo y alucinante, hasta el éxtasis contemplativo de observar a un hombre forjado en el barrio y exaltado en el ring, con la emoción y el peligro constante de no conocer los pasos hacia atrás. El popular Púas se hizo ídolo de una manera natural, casi sin saberlo, gozando del cariño, la admiración y el respeto del público en las arenas y en las calles. trilogía con Chucho Castillo en los años 70 es una serie clásica. Campeón mundial gallo y pluma, miembro del Salón de la Fama en Canastota, Nueva York. Rubén es un inmortal del boxeo.
Check out Behind the Barrel.
When a fight is coming up, you, it appears to me, deliberately build up a lot of pressure to intimidate your opponent.
And it intimidates the people. See, in America, the black people are always taught to be humble. You know, yes, boss. I'm sorry. Hey, Barbara. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. And never has a slave got up and said, I am the greatest. I'm beautiful. I'm pretty. I cannot lose. He said, that talks too much. And they pay money to see me beat. And I go to the bank laughing. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. I am the greatest. That talks, he's cocky.
The greatest of all time, of course, Muhammad Ali. God, it's been gone a few years now. It's hard to believe he's been gone. But the bottom line is Ali was the greatest of all time. We will delve into the world of Muhammad Ali through his oratory. He was the best orator, I think, of the 20th century. I mean, there was like 4 or 5 guys whose voices aligned with the 20th century, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt and John Kennedy, maybe. And of course, I think Muhammad Ali or Warren Cassius Clay was back in 1942, Louisville, Kentucky. Of course, the 1965 name change, 1964 name change, the conversion to the Nation of Islam. Of course, that brought on a lot of controversy. But Ali and I talked about that one time, and I'm going to get in trouble maybe for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Ali, we were talking one time. We're in a van. I think we're in Macau. We're going from one event to another. And I said to him, I said, you know, the Muslims, you had to deal with the Muslims where they made $1 for every dollar that you made. And I said, that's sort of like the Colonel Tom Parker deal with Elvis Presley. But it was a bit oppressive. I mean, a manager is not supposed to get half. Manager's supposed to get maybe a third or less if you work something out. But the bottom line is, for every dollar Muhammad Ali made, the Muslims made $1. So I said to him, I said, do you think that that was the wisest thing to do? And he said to me, you know what, I'd just be another end guy if I wasn't Muhammad Ali, if I wasn't a fighter, if I wasn't a fighter, of course, in society, in the streets. I'm not talking about being a boxer, but he's fighting for society. He's got different issues that he gets behind, this and that. But he was a different guy. I mean, the whole approach to Muhammad Ali, once he got his footing, without a doubt, once he became a young man. I'm talking about, he turned pro at the age of 18, of course, won the heavyweight title soon thereafter, and he was a magnificent athlete all throughout his life, without a doubt, but he wasn't good at anything but boxing. He just wasn't. He tried his hand at basketball. He tried his hand at baseball. He told me he wasn't good at any of that, and he definitely never wanted to try football. I thought that was too crazy, too mean, those guys going head to head, but then he turned out to be the world heavyweight champion. Of course, 1960 Olympic light heavyweight champion. That's right. He wasn't the heavyweight champion of the Olympics. He was the light heavyweight champion of the Olympics. Of course, he fought at 178 pounds. Of course, turned pro against Tony Hunsaker back in 1960. Tony Hunsaker was a guy that was on this show. He was a fireman from Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, that was a correlation. And of course, years afterwards, maybe 25 years ago, I talked with Tony Hunsaker on the air, and he talked about how Ali was very classy with him. And because of Ali, he's part of history. He loved that without a doubt. And I was talking about history last night. Of course, I'm talking about Jake Paul. Is Jake Paul really something to get excited about? If you're a Jake Paul fan, he is. I mean, you are. If you want to watch a guy that's sort of average and heavy, and I think semi-fat, okay, and got nice tattoos and this and that, and got a big following on Instagram, this is the guy to follow without a doubt. I mean, without a doubt. And last night, of course, he beat on Nate Diaz like a drum. I mean, but not really like a drummer would. He sort of beat on Nate Diaz like an amateur drummer would. In other words, imagine a drummer getting into a band and he doesn't know how to throw. So you've got the band going behind him, band's going bop, 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 and then you hear him going, oh, I hear the drums. What, the drums sound awful. The drums sound awful. Well, that's the way Jake Paul sort of fights. He fights awful. I mean, it just wasn't. I mean, when I looked at his skills last night, I said, well, and before in the past, he had a decent jab and he had a decent right hand, but it looked like he struggled to make 185 pounds. That's why he looked like spit last night. And he did look like spit. Of course, Nate Diaz, not the greatest fighter in the world, but he comes to us from, Stockton, California. And without a doubt, he always brings it 100%.
On a massive win for you, was he tougher than you thought he would be?
No, I mean, he's tough. He's real tough. That's what he's known for. But tough in this sport doesn't work. But if you're
Are you happy with your performance? Did you think you did enough to secure the win before the scorecards were read?
Oh, for sure. I knocked him down. Won basically every round. I think he won one round. But he's a warrior, you know. I had him hurt in the first round. He kept on coming. And no one's taken that much damage. But all credit to my team, my conditioning. Going 10 rounds in my 8th fight. It's unheard of. Only been boxing for 3 years. Beat a UFC legend. I was watching this kid growing up. But I want to run it back in MMA.
Jake Paul running it back in MMA. Jake Paul will not fight MMA. Let's just stick to the world of boxing. You're limited to that. But the bottom line is, last night, the ladies were on display. I'm talking about Amanda Serrano. Of course, I mentioned her a little bit earlier, and Heather Hardy. Good fight. These guys had fought before. These ladies had fought before. Of course, it was a rematch. Serrano now 45-2-1, winning 30 KOs. A unanimous beatdown of Heather Hardy. Of course, they both come from the New York area, and Heather Hardy, of course, she was game. She got cut up. She got busted up. It was ugly. She sort of looked like Chuck Webner at one point in time. She took so many deep body shots in the early going that I was like cringing. And I don't cringe too often, but I'm telling you, Amanda Serrano was digging to the body. I mean, just digging to the body. I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez like hooks to the body. She was just ripping the body. Of course, Heather Hardy now 24-3. Her lack of power probably never made her part of the fight, because unless you can hurt Amanda Serrano and back her off, you're not going to beat her. Of course, she's 24-3 now, 4 KOs. It was a 10-round, unanimous nod. Of course, like 190. I think one judge gave her 1 round. But the bottom line is, it showed to me that women's boxing is here to stay without a doubt. And I think that Jake Paul is doing a great job as far as putting these women on display. I mean, putting them on display because other promoters won't. Okay, he has. I mean, Amanda Serrano, she was making like 25 grand. It was the most she ever made in her life was $25,000. She hooked up with Jake Paul. She made 125 or 250 grand in the first fight. Then she went with the girl from Ireland, Katie Taylor, and fought her for the World Lightweight Championship. Of course, that was a bit of a ripoff. I thought that decision was terrible, but she got like close to $1 million for that, and then she got 250 grand for last night. So more power to the young lady. And then they told me that Jake Paul took like $4 million and spread it out over the undercard. So the undercard, they already had their purses together, but he threw another couple of $1 million at the undercard. So the bottom line is, some of the people fighting on that card were making over $100,000 last night. More power to them. And I see these poor guys fighting maybe $1,500 like for a 4-rounder. This and that. You see these guys, they're carpenters or they're gardeners or maybe they work for a police department or something like that, and they box part-time. But these are journeyman fighters, okay? And they're getting 50. This is not good. I think they should get paid handsomely. Anybody that steps in the ring, whether you're in there as an opponent, which means you have little chance or none, Slim and none, and Slim just left town, or you're in there to win and you're the guy, the bottom line is you deserve it. Straight up, this has been Ring Talk Live Worldwide, your inside look in the world of boxing and MMA. The American Airlines Arena last night was packed to the gill. I mean, Dallas, Texas, it was packed to the gill. Home of the Dallas Mavericks. It was just, there wasn't a seat to be available. And what can you say about Jake Paul? He can draw. Of course, Amanda Serrano, of course, living off that without a doubt. As far as a future in boxing is concerned, he did go 10 rounds last night. I thought they were a sloppy 10 rounds, but then again, against Nate Diaz, you can't look good against Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is the ultimate. He just can't. I mean, he fought like weird and did old Nate Diaz things and tried to taunt him and this and that. But the bottom line is, Nate Diaz was never, ever, 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 ever in the fight. After they said, the referee's instructions, that was it. After that point, it was all Jake Paul. Jake Paul, to an extent, knocked him down. It totally dominated him. At the end of the night, I think the scores were like 7-3 and 8-2 as far as rounds were concerned. But to give Nate Diaz a couple of rounds, I thought was very generous last night. But, in the world of MMA and boxing now crossing over, of course, Francis Ngannou was featured on last night's show. And, of course, he's going to challenge Tyson Fury for the World Heavyweight Championship. And I want to give Francis all the props in the world. I think he's a great fighter. But, does he deserve to get like 10 or 15 or 20 million dollars to step in to fight Tyson Fury? Come on, man. There's other guys more deserving. Or are there? Or is there a more interesting fight? Is this the most interesting fight out there? I mean, Ngannou, He lost a couple of fights in the world of the UFC, but each fight that he lost, I think he learned from. I swear to you, I think he learned from them. Of course, when he couldn't fight on the ground, he learned how to fight on the ground. So he's got different aspects to his game. Now, can he convert it all to a stand-up boxing game? Well, he's been knocking people dead if he hits them with a 4-ounce glove standing up. If he hits Tyson Fury hard enough, I think he can knock Tyson Fury out. I mean, Tyson Fury's been knocked down by Deontay Wilder. Of course, at one time when he was down, he looked like the Undertaker in some WWE event. Like his eyes were closed. Remember, everybody's going, "That's it." And then Jack Reese, the referee, God bless him, but he didn't call the fight right then. I mean, if ever there was a time when a referee could have said, "It's over," that was it. His eyes were closed. It looked like he was in a casket, ready to be, buried, right? And then he opens up his eyes. And Tyson Fury gets up. So Tyson Fury is an amazing athlete. Ngannou's an amazing athlete. The clash of these two guys, of course, is going to be on pay-per-view. And of course, speaking of the pay-per-view numbers, last week's Earl Spence, Terrence Crawford, which we'll get into with Johnny Sig in our next segment, but it did 620,000 homes at the highest as far as pay-per-view is concerned. Of course, the Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Davis exhibition. Ryan showed up. Looked good, didn't fight. All right, there he is on his ass. Ryan Garcia. Of course, Ryan Garcia is now with the trainer of Earl Spence, and these guys think that they're going to be able to turn chicken soup into chicken spit. I mean, chicken spit into chicken soup. Can't happen. Ain't going to happen. You can't do it. I mean, at the end of the day, Ryan Garcia training him, according to Joe Goosen, it's a collaboration of him, talk about Ryan Garcia, Ryan's father, and the trainer. So you've got to collaborate with 3 people to train one guy. Showed it. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Next up, Johnny Signorella on Ring Talk Live Worldwide.
Did you have an idol in the past, or do you have an idol now?
My idol in the past was Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley es el ídolo que él ha tenido en el pasado.
Now my idol is Mr. Jose Sulu.
Ahora su ídolo es el señor José Sulaimán. Is your first time here in Mexico?
I came through once, but I can't remember exactly what I did, but I was here once.
I'm Frank Ripley, inventor of Frackwell, the boxer's water bottle. You're watching WBC Live Channel, powered by Vive.
I thought about my children. I watched the baby cry another day, and my wife was late giving the baby milk, and the baby raised hell. Ah! Just hollering. Don't know where they're going to get it, but they just expect you to have it. And I looked at about 6 more coming, and I said, 10 years from now, we'll be fighting. 10 years from now, that baby will just be 10 years old. And I'll need money. He'll need school books. He'll need clothes, bus fare. And then 20 years from now, my daughter need a house or she'll need a job. And it'll be shame to say Muhammad Ali's daughter, a waitress in a restaurant. He made all of those millions. What I'm trying to say, I can earn enough money in 5 years if I invest it and put it up right to take care of my grandchildren.
The greatest, without a doubt, as I said, one of the greatest orators of the 20th century, maybe of all time. And of course, by the 21st century, he was all but silenced by Parkinson's and the residual effects of professional boxing. Now, we take it from San Francisco to Sin City, Las Vegas, and bring in Sin City Signal Costs. I'm talking about AKA Johnny Signorella. And how are you today, young man?
I'm doing great, Pedro. How are you?
That's fine. Let's talk about Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford before we get into some of the fights that took place last night. You know, at one point in time, Muhammad Ali was examined at the Mayo Clinic prior to the Larry Holmes fight back in 1979, 1980. Of course, the fight took place October 2nd, 1980. It was a terrible fight. Looked a whole lot like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford last week. So anyway, but Muhammad Ali was sent to the Mayo Clinic for a physical. So he goes to the Mayo Clinic, and he's unable to take his finger with his eyes closed and touch his nose. In other words, they have him try several times. He can't touch the tip of his nose with his hand. Okay, so anyway, the Nevada State Athletic Commission said, okay, that guy's in decent physical condition. We'll let him fight Larry Holmes. I mean, come on. They let him fight Larry Holmes, which was a crime, without a doubt. And I think letting Errol Spence fight Terrence Crawford was equally as criminal.
I don't think it was near as bad, to be honest with you, Pedro. However, I do believe there were complications for Errol Spence going in. I'm no doctor. Obviously, if you get ejected from a vehicle at a very high speed, 40 feet into the air and pretty much land on the side of your face, like I believe he did, that's not going to be good for your head. And especially when your occupation for a living is that you box and repeatedly take devastating blows by world-class opposition, such as Mr. Terrence Crawford. So, I mean, accumulation of prior fights, the accident, especially after what had happened with Terrence Crawford last week, Errol Spence's health is definitely in question at this point in time and a concern right now.
So what about this doctor that's claiming he has neurological damages? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Let me tell you, when you get tossed out of a car and then they took those pictures, when you saw the blood around his corneas and his eyes, that is a clear example of a brain bleed. Okay, and that photo was taken almost a month after the accident. You can imagine what it was like, in the first few days or the first week of this and that. So he was in bad shape, and they sort of like buried that, I think, to an extent. Jerry Jones's people down there in Texas did a good job keeping that sort of out of the public eye. Of course, he was a drunk. He had a drunk driving charge. He had a $10,000 handgun in the car. I mean, Errol Spence, for all, how can I put it? He's not the angel we thought he was. I mean, why would you need a $10,000 gold-plated handgun in your car? And why are you going 150 miles per hour unless somebody's chasing you?
Obviously, it was a night of bad decisions. What did Chris Rock say at one point in time in one of his brilliant stand-ups? Anything after about 2 o'clock in the morning is probably a bad idea for anyone. Whatever they do in their lifestyle, outside of the ring, you just hope these guys are a little bit more careful. Sometimes you get called out on it. That night, Errol Spence, unfortunately, did get called out on it with that terrible, accident. Speaking of swept under the rug, remember, he was supposed to fight Pacquiao after that. And that fight was canceled or postponed originally. And that fight never surfaced again because of that eye. Right? Mm-hmm. So we got to look at some factors there. That's a situation. Maybe someone knew something there. But then again, it's like, Crawford, he's no pushover. He's one of the best in the world. So that's a dangerous fight. So if they knew something going in, that's very tragic. But I don't think so.
Okay, so what about the strategy in the corner? I mean, what about corner giving them advice? I couldn't hear that guy give him like one word of advice as long as it lasted. I didn't hear him say anything. Did you?
Man, I tell you what, that is the theater of truth right there, because he was just, got the award for Trainer of the Year, and it was his time to step up for his charge. And there was no answers that night for Errol Spence, man. Crawford was everything was in concert. The combinations, the leg movement. Spence had no lateral movement, walking in a straight line. I mean, if neurologically he was impaired going into that fight, I don't think there was anything he could have done if he was completely clear upstairs. I mean, again, Crawford's just that type of guy. The only thing, Pedro, to your point, I did notice about Spence over the years, his speech has slowed down a lot. And that's usually an indication that something's up.
Indication somebody's up, but he's also rumored to have a thirst problem. So when you have a thirst problem, your speech gets slurred and things like that. So, I mean, I'll tell you about the first guy I ever met in boxing. His name was Frankie Click. At one point in time, he was a world junior welterweight champion. He beat Kid Chocolate back in the 1930s and 1940s. I think it was late 1930s. Anyway, he was on a street corner in San Francisco when I was growing up, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I saw him in the street. And my father used to say to me, "This is what happens when you get punched too much." In other words, he was punch drunk, okay? And he was laying in the street drinking wine, this and that. But when Frankie wasn't drunk, Frankie could recall dates, times, the whole 9 yards. He was completely lucid. So, I want to go with the fact that alcohol played a good role in that. But that sort of told me what boxing was all about early on. That's why I didn't want to get hit too often.
Yeah, it's a brutal sport, as we were saying, and you mix in a couple of accidents and you have bad, decisions you make outside the ring, what you put in your body, too much alcohol, too much anything isn't good. We all live and learn. And, I love Errol Spence. I think he's great for boxing. He's got, his future ahead of him. He
got no future. If his future is ahead of him, it's not in boxing, though.
I would like to see him really get evaluated, and then we take it from there. But he's talking a rematch right away.
You can't talk about wanting to medically evaluate somebody after what already went down. I mean, the first accident, the car accident, was enough to say, you know what, it's over. Because if you look at that picture, and if that happened in a boxing match, he would never box again in his entire life. They would never let him box. Okay, I don't think that the doctors were responsible as far as Errol Spence was concerned. I really don't, and I think the brain damage that I think is involved here is permanent. You can't reverse it. And of course, they cashed in. It was a cash thing, and that's why they weren't giving him any advice in the corner last night, because they realized they had a guy, or last week was because they realized they had a guy with no coordination, no reflexes, no pop on his punch, no legs. Can I keep going?
Well, you got points there, and the thing is too, if you go back to the Ugas fight, you start seeing the signs of that kind of erosion a little bit. Is that with Spence, he would vary his combinations. It became just straight line, jab to the stomach, hook to the body, double hooks to the body, back, repeat. Ugas caught him and actually hurt Spence in that fight. Another thing that a lot of people didn't talk about going into this fight, not that Ugas isn't a good fighter, but at the end of the day, that was definitely something to raise brows.
Well, the Cuban's not a big puncher. I mean, the Cuban,
exactly.
I mean, come on, the guy's a very. Why is it? Here's the trip. I'll ask you a question. Why is it Cuban fighters can't punch, but Colombian fighters always can punch?
I don't know, man. Better rice? I don't know.
Ooh, better carbs. Okay, without a doubt. No, I'm serious about that, though. I mean, every guy I know from Colombia can crack just about, but yet Cubans seem to be pitter-patters.
A couple of Cubans definitely over the years. I mean, they're known for their amateur pedigree. They're built to last long. They're built to have long careers, right? With the amateur pedigree. So they kind of bring that style to the pros, and you don't get many knockouts with that style, as we've seen over the years. But, I think it's pretty much just a style thing. I don't think it's anything like genetically wrong or anything like that.
Amanda Serrano last night fought a 10-round fight with Heather Hardy. Of course, won just about every round. I thought except on one scorecard, they gave Miss Hardy 1 round. Bottom line is, they were fighting sloppy in about the 6th round. I said to myself, thank goodness these rounds are 2-minute rounds. Am I wrong? Am I being biased there?
In certain situations, it's a judgment call. Like last night, I could see your point. It's like you just want to get it over with, or maybe an extra 20 seconds, the referee decides to stop the fight in the 5th round, or the 6th round. Actually, Heather did really good in the 5th round. But like, say another round in that fight, the 6th round, and say the ref elects to stop it because it's going on a little longer. You could tell the referee was close, Pedro, to your point, is that especially towards the end of the fight. But Heather just kept charging back up. To her credit, man, she's a beast. But, I mean, it depends on the situation. But last night you could have definitely seen stoppage on the writing was on the wall for that, past 2 minutes.
No, I get that. What I'm trying to say is that the rounds were the rounds started to lag, and they were 2-minute rounds. So imagine if they had to fight 3-minute rounds from the start, they'd have been dead after 5.
It could be. Amanda looked good to me, start to finish. Heather got that like
old. put her in a wheelchair.
Oh, those combinations look good. You didn't think those combinations look good?
Yeah, they look good, but look who she was throwing them against. I mean, the girl wasn't throwing back early on. She just wasn't. She had a couple of good rounds, but outside of that, Heather Hardy wasn't in that fight.
She got fired up down the stretch, though, man. I liked her passion last night.
Oh, man, hey, bottom line is she took a good licking and she kept ticking. She went 10 rounds, 10 2-minute rounds. Had there been 10 3-minute rounds, it would have been a drag. Straight up. Johnny Siganar, next segment, we'll talk about, of course, Nanoa Inoue, the pound-for-pound great. Is he the pound-for-pound great, or is Terrence Crawford better? We'll talk about that. Of course, it's all mythical. We'll talk about the pound-for-pound listings and more on the next segment of Ring Talk Live Worldwide and WBC TV.
Hey guys, this is Brian the Wine Punch Valoria. Stay tuned to WBC TV and FIT.
Medallista de plata en los Juegos Olímpicos de Múnich 1972. Debutó como profesional en 1973. Luego de 20 knockouts en forma consecutiva, le llegó la oportunidad para disputar el Campeonato Mundial Gallo y lo ganó, derrotando al surcoreano So Hwan Hong por la vía rápida en 4 episodios. Era el año 1975. Realizó 5 defensas con el mismo número de knockouts, hasta que perdió el cetro a finales de 1977. Meses antes, protagonizó con Carlos Zárate un combate que fue un acontecimiento en México. Todo mundo hablaba de la pelea de las Zetas. El Dado de Tlatelolco se retiró en 1980 y es recordado como un pugilista espectacular que consiguió 32 knockouts en sus 33 victorias.
El que deja de aprender terminó su vida. El que sigue aprendiendo sigue viviendo.
¡José Sulaimán! What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels.
Él me llevó por primera vez a una clínica de rehabilitación, como lo acabo de decir. Eso también se lo voy a
San Antonio's very own world champion, talking about Mr. Jesse James Leija. How you doing, Jess?
Pedro, I'm doing great, man. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good. The gym's doing well. Family's okay?
Everybody's doing well. Actually, we're going to go to Austin in about an hour or so to go have some dinner in Austin and come back home.
Fantastic. Now, I want to talk to you about the Earl Spence fight. And the reason why I brought you in on this one is that he got tossed out of that car at 115 miles an hour, and you saw the injuries afterwards, this and that. If he had got those kind of injuries in a boxing ring, they'd have never allowed him to box again. Why? Do you think he should have boxed again?
You know what? So here's the thing. I'm sure that he passed some type of test. I mean, they wouldn't let him just come back and no one knows. I don't know what type of head trauma he had during his accident. I'm sure there was something there, but he hasn't been the same. I mean, he just, I keep telling people he's a shell of his former self because he's nothing like what he used to fight. Like, at least this last fight, he wasn't. Against you guys, he did okay, but maybe, I don't know, it was just something wrong. We just all know there was something wrong. And it's not a weight problem because weight problems usually happen after the 5th, 6th, 7th round when you just, died out from trying to make weight all the time. But this is from the get-go. He was just off. Walking into the ring, he looked off.
Yeah, we're talking with the Texas Tornado. The Texas Tornado, Jesse James Leija, 47-7. Of course, 19 KOs. The Azuma Nelson fights, of course, nobody will forget that. What was it like to sell out the Alamo Dome?
That was, that was one of my highlights of my career as far as being there and feeling the atmosphere. It was crazy because I try to explain to people. It's almost impossible to explain because it's like a mother trying to explain to you what it feels like to give birth. You just don't know what it is until you do it. But this fight thing, it was just, when they opened up the curtain, the sheer energy and the wave pushed me back. That literally pushed me back, and I told everybody that was wrong. Did you feel that? And they was like, yeah, it was a crazy. You can't explain it, but it was just an amazing highlight fighting in front of 62,000 people.
Okay. How can I put this? What do you? Was it all about your manager? Was that why you think you're together financially and other fighters aren't, and things like that? I mean, let's talk about your manager.
I had a manager, Lester Bedford, who's managed me for 17 years. Yep. He saw me in the Texas Golden Gloves fighting. Joe Souza, the famous cut man, introduced us to each other, and I hadn't turned pro, obviously, so he didn't say. He goes, but if you do, I would like to talk to you about it. I think you should do something. So he came down, met with my parents, and the first thing he said to my family is, James may never win a world title. He may never make it as a boxer, but if we keep his name clean like it is now, maybe somebody would want to hire him and in the city because they really love him. Because I was a Olympic climber. I was in the Olympic trials and the whole bit. So one thing, not that it's hard to do, but one thing I always managed to do is keep my name clean, be a good person. It's nothing hard. It's just being a good person, right? How hard is that? It's harder to be a bad person than a good person. Anyway, so I've always done that. And, now I could call the mayor. I could call the mayor up right now and want a meeting with him. I'd call the Spurs and set up a meeting with the Spurs. I could call pretty much anyone in San Antonio.
Oh, time out. So you telling me if Bruno Mars comes to San Antonio, you can hook me up?
I'll call the AT&T Center and they'll hook me up. Yeah, and they'll hook me up. Hey, Bruno Mars is a boxer, right? He was a boxer back in the day.
I heard
he was a boxer.
Really?
Yeah, I heard
really?
He loves boxing. Yeah, he was adopted. He and I had something in common. He was adopted too. He was adopted from I forgot who, but he was adopted as an infant, and I was too. Through family, I was adopted through family, but I didn't know it till I was 10 years old, and. You know how my dad was a fighter. Who was really my uncle, was a fighter. My dad was the first San Antonio to ever make it to the National Golden Gloves Finals in 1968 or so. And so, that's how I started boxing when I was 19.
Bruno Mars,
in honor of my dad.
Bruno Mars, a.k.a. Pete Hernandez. I kid you not. Anyway, let's take it from.
Oh wow.
Let's bring in Sin City Sig. I'm talking about Johnny Signorello. Johnny, say hello to Jesse. You got a question for him?
Hey, Jesse, how's it going today, man?
I'm doing well, Johnny. How you doing?
Hello?
Keep going. Go.
Very well. Thank you, sir. So, yes, you fought some of the best of the best, man. One fight that really stands out, Francisco Banjado. Way back, I believe it was 2004.
Banjito.
Right? And that kid was on fire, and you came in and you put the fire out. That was a pretty incredible fight. What are your thoughts on that fight so many years removed? That was a big moment.
So it was. Yes, it was. It was my second to my last fight. And before that fight, I'm telling you a true story. During that fight, I had injuries. Every fighter fights injured, but I had injuries. Especially, I'm 38 years old, fighting Francisco Barra. He's 21, I'm 38. And during the fight, I've had separated ribs the last 3 years of my career. And it was just, they never heal because there's no blood flow through that area, and it just takes forever to heal. Anyhow, he kept hitting me in the rib over and over in the first few rounds. He dropped me in the first round, the second round. Then he kept hitting me in that rib. People knew about the rib. Shane Mosley knew about it. He hit me. Anyway, I was looking for a spot on the ring of where to take a knee and call it their career. I was just like, I got to take a knee. I can't believe that. I was really looking for the spot. Next round came over. I said, screw that spot, and I'm gonna win this fight. It was a 6 or 7 round. I won the fight. Big fight, gave me the opportunity to fight Arturo Gatti.
You know what sort of cracked me up about that fight was that Bojado, he was hot at one point. I mean, really like super hot. And Lenny Fresquez said to me, I think Roberto Duran had piled out at the last minute, and Lenny Fresquez said, see if you can get Bojado to come into to Albuquerque and appear at this show we're going to do. I said, okay. So they called Bojado and they set it up through his management and this and that. So Bojado came to town. They gave him a car. They picked him up at the car in the at a car in the airport. He was doing blow. He was smoking cigarettes, and he had all kinds of women. And I mean, come on. He was just not the most disciplined guy in the entire world. And this was like this was before you.
Yeah. And so here's another thing about this. So we knew that Bojado. Okay. First of all the fighters I fought, right? I'm gonna be, not because I beat him, but I'm being truthful and honest. He had everything together. He had everything. He had power. He had speed. He had technique. He had balance. He had everything, right? He had, better. He had, Oscar was a left-handed fighter. Bojado had both hands that were great. Shane Moses was just speed. Bojado had speed and power. Any fighter you could think about, he just had everything, but he didn't have discipline. And that's a crucial thing he didn't have. And so, but he was one of the best fighters, one of the best fighters I fought, but he did not have discipline. And our training camp, the whole fight game plan was to push him really, really hard the first 3 or 4 rounds, and he would tire out, and I'll be able to pick him apart after that. And they went down to a T. Except I wasn't planning on getting dropped. But after that, I got up and went right after again, and I won the fight.
That's commendable because every time I got dropped, I lost. That's that's just the way it was. When I got separated from my senses, I was separated. So, Jess, hey, Jess, you got a website for the gym?
No, it's on Instagram. It's Leija Boxing and Fitness on Instagram and on Facebook. But we don't have we're working on a website right now. We don't have one now, but Leija Boxing and Fitness in San Antonio, Texas.
All right, my brother. You take good care. Hug the wife, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
The great Jesse James Leija, of course, back to Las Vegas, and Johnny Signorella, of course. Johnny Sig, he's got class, integrity, character. I mean, few people I know in the world have that, but he's just a dynamic human being, Jesse James Leija, without a doubt.
Great guy to talk to and be around. And also, man, he's one of those great fighters that fought the best, man. He's a true definition of a great prize fighter and a great fighter and a great guy out of the ring.
Okay. Is Virgil Ortiz ever going to fight again?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that kid. I just hope he's okay. He's a little young to be experiencing all these health issues. I really hope they find what's going on with him.
I mean, when you have blood issues and things like that and cutting weight doesn't work and this kind of, I mean, I think the writing's been on the wall. Like, how many postponements did he have with that one guy? The poor guy got stiff 4 or 5 times.
I think it was 2 on behalf of Ortiz. The first one, I believe, was the other way around. But either which way, that fight is jinxed, and they just got to let it go. And most importantly for Ortiz, he's got to just, see what's up. It's unfortunate. You look at the 19-0, 19 KOs, you say, okay, this kid's got a future. But if he's having a hard time making weight and something's wrong with his blood, that's affecting his organs. That's affecting a lot of stuff in there. Again, I'm no doctor, but he's got to get looked at a little bit more thorough. I think it's beyond weight cuts. Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about the Oscar De La Hoya special on Netflix or whatever it is. Of course, has that been, was it riveting? Was it worth watching?
It is definitely worth watching. It was very well done. Mark Wahlberg, Mario Lopez, shout out to those two. De La Hoya is straight up honest, raw. I don't want to give anything away. There are some things in there, even the most diehard people that followed Oscar will not know about. That never knew about that will now know. It's pretty wild.
Everybody knows about the Russian hookers. I told them about it.
Oh, it goes beyond that, man. There's some really deep things in there. And it's definitely, it goes beyond boxing too. It's definitely a study on conditions such as addiction.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Certainly is.
Without a doubt. Jake Paul's a bit of a drug. Of course, he sold out an American Airlines arena last night. More power to him. The performance he put although he went 10 rounds, which is a significant accomplishment, I guess, for a young man with only 8 or 9 fights, he just looked like a fat guy to me.
You know what? He's all right. He's got some loose muscle in there, which is okay for a boxer. But he definitely burnt out his gas tank. He had a great opening round. He looked like he was going to blow Diaz out of there, and then he burned himself out. And then with Diaz, you look at that, he had nothing on his punches. So I think if anything, it was more so just, Paul not being able to relax. I mean, both guys were ineffective with punching because they were moving off every shot. Nobody ever planted their feet. People are like, well, how come these hits aren't doing anything? Nobody's planting their feet, and it's just like nothing's planned really. I give him a lot of props. So first of all, whatever the Fansly thing was with those girls there, those webcam girls, man, I tell you what, these Paul brothers got energy drinks. They got fights, adult business women there. They got it all going on, Pedro.
Yeah, they do. I saw Jake Paul's girlfriend, and she's definitely cameras would not run from her.
And get this, his brother gets off a plane after competing in SummerSlam to go see his brother box. I mean, you can't hate what these kids are doing.
Come on. You don't compete in SummerSlam. You act in SummerSlam.
Okay, acted in SummerSlam.
Am I right?
No, to a degree.
Oh, competition.
Oh, man, come on. Some of those things hurt.
No, I'm not saying they don't hurt, but
not a competitive sport.
It's still a choreographed. It's still a choreographed. It's an act.
I agree with that. It's definitely, choreographed and all that. But, as far as for him, a good opponent would be, I think, a rematch with Fury, with Tommy Fury. He's only lost there. I mean, the kid, if he really dedicates himself and learns how to, box a little bit better for his energy, his skills aren't that bad. He just needs to preserve his energy better. Too much moving and punching at the same time. No good.
Okay, what about Francis Ngannou bringing in Mike Tyson as his trainer for this Tyson Fury fight? Is that just all publicity?
Just when I thought I couldn't love this whole thing more, I love it more. I think it's wonderful. I think it's the perfect fit. And remember, this is kind of funny. A little Easter egg here. Tyson Fury was named after Mike Tyson. Now he's got to face Mike Tyson in a way through Francis Ngannou. Pretty wild, when you think about it that way. But I think from a tactical standpoint, we know what Fury's capable of. No need to get long-winded on that. Ngannou, it's all about this, Pedro. No matter who the trainer is, can he land that left hook from hell? Or
on the right hand. The right hand.
The right hand.
I don't even know if he has much of a left hook. I mean, he's just unlike Deontay Wilder. See, Deontay Wilder's right hand takes a long time. It doesn't take a long time to get there. It travels a good distance, okay? When Ngannou throws his right hand, it's a little bit shorter.
That is true. That is very true. And again, that's what works for them. That's Deontay's thing. And, obviously it's worked on many occasions. Hey, Pedro, since we're talking about knockouts, there's one that we missed here before my segment goes. MLB, Major League Baseball, Cleveland, Ohio last night. Jose Ramirez, right hook, knocks out Tim Anderson of the White Sox. Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
In the bottom of the sixth.
No.
Oh, you got to see it. You got to pull that up. Jose Ramirez, right hook, knocks out Tim Anderson in Cleveland.
Was he ejected from the game?
Oh, yeah. There was a big brawl on the field. It was pretty wild, too. Tim Anderson, he sized up southpaw. It's like a legit. People know how to fight nowadays. So they broke out stances and, conventional for Ramirez. He got underneath and he shot him with a right hook and bang, lights out, knocked him out.
Johnny Signorella, a.k.a. Sin City Sig. Straight up, had a great day. I hope you have a great week with the family. We'll talk real soon.
Absolutely, Pedro. Thanks so much for having me, brother.
You are tuned to Ring Talk Live World.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pill?
about 8 minutes. Of course, 12:06 Pacific time, 3:06 Eastern time. Of course, Ring Talk Live Worldwide, hour number 2. We'll bring in Jim Stinson. Who is Jim Stinson? Jim Stinson is a promoter of sorts. He's a promoter of autographed pictures. I kid you not. So what he would do is he would get like Muhammad Ali or Joe Montana or some celebrity like that. He would get them to come in and sign a bunch of pictures for her at an event, and then people would pay to get an autographed picture. Anyway, Jim Stinson will be here in hour number 2 talking about the history of boxing, athletics. I mean, he did it all. I mean, every famous person in the world, I think, just about, except maybe Gandhi, Jim Stinson's got an autographed picture session with. So we'll talk about that in depth in hour number 2 of Ring Talk Live World. Of course, still the worst person in the world, still Dana White. We'll talk about his card in hour number 2. Of course, he did have a show last night. Of course, Dana is rocking and rolling and making money. And I'll say it again, if you hit somebody when they're on the ground, it's like, it's like banging somebody with a hammer. I mean, there's nowhere for their head to go. So that's why I'm against these strikes on the ground. Of course, Jake Stitch Duran, the cut man to the stars, he weighed in on that last week. And he's seeing a lot of fighters from the world of mixed martial arts with pugilistic dementia now. Of course, they're looking punch drunk. And why? Because they're taking blows I don't think aren't, listen, nobody's really made to get hit. Okay, but nobody's made to get hit with elbows and knees and that kind of good stuff. That stuff is absolutely crazy. Hour number 2 of Ring Talk Live Worldwide, a production of the Sports Byline Broadcast Network, comes up in 6 minutes. Of course, after the news, you are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from the West Coast, it's time for Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Your inside look into combat sports.
Ring Talk Live Worldwide is brought to you by the World Boxing Council, the WBC.
That is just a fact of life. And now, the host of the longest-running fight show in radio and internet history, Pedro Fernandez. Woo, it's going to be good.
Damas y caballeros, bienvenidos, ladies and gentlemen, coming at you from the multi-million-dollar Sports Byline Studios. Check it. This is Ring Talk Live Worldwide, airing on VTV. Often imitated, but never duplicated. 37. No, make that 38 plus years now of knocking out all bums. Who am I? My name is Pedro Fernandez. I am ever so modest host. When I say modest, think caps. I'm a 4-time Golden Glove champion and an award-winning boxing writer. So I cover the boxing game from a different perspective than most people do. But then I've got my opinions and you have yours. So if you want to join in, you can. The toll-free is 1-800-878-7529. The toll-free listener line right now, 1-800-878-7529. You can also text me in the studio. The text number is 415-532-4867. That's right. The non-committal text line. People like to text. People don't like to talk on the radio or on the show because they feel that they'll be embarrassed or they don't like the way they sound, this and that. Listen, I don't like the way I sound, but the bottom line is I got to do this. Straight up, often the text line is very hot and happening. Today it's got a few texts. Let's see if we get a few more. Text number, once again, 415-532-4867. That's 415-532-4867. Well, let's look at the lightweight division. Devin Haney is no longer the champion. He's not. He's moved up to 140 pounds to take on Rage's Progress for the WBC 140-pound crown. So at 135, we got Shakur Stevenson, Gervonta Davis. I mean, we've got some rockers and rollers at 135 pounds. But are they going to fight each other? And who's the best fighter pound for pound in the world? Is it Nanoa Inoue or is it Terrence Crawford? And Terrence Crawford getting long in the tooth. Is he old? Is he too old to box anymore? Hell no. I mean, I thought he was like ancient looking when he looked as far as drying out was concerned. But once he dried out and got his fluids back together, Earl Spence was no match for Terrence Crawford. And was that because Earl Spence was damaged goods going in? I think so. You are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Shakur Stevenson calling out Lomachenko is going to stop him if they hook it up. Youth versus age. Not too good. Not a good thing for the old guy. Straight up, this is Ring Talk.
You know, it's my theory that if Don King was born rich and white, he'd be Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump was born poor and black, he'd be Don King.
The retired HBO Godfather Larry Merchant, we gave him the day off. He's on vacation. We love him. 92 years young, still rocking and rolling, of course, living in Santa Monica, California. But I can't thank him enough. Over the years, we've been together since 1985. April 15th, 1985. Of course, the Haggler had just destroyed Thomas Hearns. The hitman, became the hurt man like in 3 rounds. But we're in the sports pavilion, which was like these little small place, held about 4,000 or 5,000 people. They had the Larry Holmes, Ken Norton fight. Of course, a great fight in 1978, a heavyweight title fight there. They had that there. A lot of good fights there, without a doubt. But this is where they were holding a press conference at, because the fight was held outdoors in a stadium they built on the tennis courts. But that was an amazing evening. So Larry walks up to me. I don't know Larry from anybody, right? He says to me, he goes, "Can you believe that?" And from that, can you believe that, we've evolved now, was like almost 40 years now, straight up. The retired HBO Godfather will be here next week with us on Ring Talk Live Worldwide, now without a doubt. Now, Terrence Crawford, 40-0 now, of course, 35 years old. Illinois, 30 years old now, 25-0. Gervonta Davis, of course, 29-0, 28 years old. Shakur Stevenson, 26 years old, 20-0. Devin Haney, of course, 30-0, but with an asterisk next to that, because I thought he lost the last fight against Vasyl Lomachenko, of course. And Rage's Progress is the 140-pound champion of the WBC. Of course, he lost that one fight to, he went across the pond. What was that all about? Anytime you fight across the pond, I think you're at a disadvantage. I really do. I mean, anytime you fight in another guy's another guy's country. Eddie Croft talked about that in depth. Of course, you talk about the fact that you can't dry out sometimes. Sometimes you don't get the right food. Sometimes, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff goes on, without a doubt. But you have to give Reaches Progress, of course, props, because he came back after the Josh Taylor fight. That Josh Taylor fight, if it was held anywhere else, I think he would have won that based on skills, but it wasn't held anywhere else. It was held across the pond in the UK. Now, Devin Haney, as I said, going to 140 to take on the aforementioned Rage's Progress. Of course, that fight's going to take place, I believe, in Las Vegas. That's going to be in September or October. They haven't got an exact date on that one. Earl Spence, don't ever mention. Somebody just shot me. When do I think Earl Spence is next? No, he shouldn't have the rematch. Come on. If anything is criminal, it would be criminal putting Earl Spence back in a boxing ring right now. I mean, come on. Muhammad Ali couldn't take his hand and touch his nose with his finger before the Larry Holmes fight back in 1980. He took a physical at the Mayo Clinic, and they cleared him. I'm talking about the Nevada State Athletic Commission, the same people that cleared Earl Spence. They cleared him to fight. What can I say? So what I'm trying to say is that these standards sometimes in Nevada aren't what they should be. But pound for pound, we look at the list, of course, Crawford, Inoue, Saul Alvarez. Is he really a pound for pound great anymore? Pound for pound top 10? I mean, he's 33 years old now. Stick a fork in him. I think he's done. Of course, that last fight against John Ryder, he just looked old and slow. I mean, maybe any other Canelo, any version of Canelo, any younger version of Canelo would have won that fight handily and stopped him inside the distance. But then again, Ryder was fighting on principle because of the fact that he's from the UK, and they were anointing King Charles. They were putting a crown on the king. So it was one of the biggest days in UK history, and he, of course, part of UK boxing history, of course, going 12 rounds with Canelo Alvarez, thought to be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Now, who do I think is he? I think I want to go with Inoue. Why do I want to go with Inoue? I just think I don't know. I mean, Terrence Crawford been around a long time. And Crawford's moved up from different weight classes, 135, 140, 147. And maybe I'm not giving him all the props he deserves, but I just don't think that beating Earl Spence last week is enough to anoint you as a pound-for-pound great. The reason why I say that is Spence was damaged goods. He was just damaged goods. There was no doubt about it. He was damaged goods. So now that he's out of the picture, who should Crawford fight next? Crawford says the next fight will be at 154 pounds. Well, at 154, of course, you got the Charlo brother. He's moving up to 168, and that's maybe critical. Think about that. when Kell Brook was the IBF or WBA 147-pound champion, welterweight champion, he moved up 13 pounds or 2 weight divisions to take on Triple G when Triple G was hot. Gennady Golovkin, okay? It ended up being a career ender basically for Kell Brook because it broke some bones in his face, and he was never the same after. He couldn't go back to 147 and be good. He just wasn't. He was done, okay? So I think that, how can I put this? You got to tell a fighter when it's time to go. You just have to. You have to tell a fighter when it's time to go. I mean, some of these fighters now that we've got on top, the young guys, I think it's really good when you go through the top 10 pound for pound in the world of the box rec. None of these guys are over 30 to 35 years old, which is cool. Of course, Progress is 34. Spence is 33. How is Spence still number 9 pound for pound in box rec? Devin Haney, 24. Shakur Stevenson, 26. Of course, Davis, 28 years old. Gennady Golovkin, how the hell is he sort of went out with a whimper, didn't he? I mean, come on. That's what Abel Sanchez said. Of course, Abel Sanchez, his former trainer, of course, what happened with Gennady Golovkin? He was one of the hottest fighters on the planet. Then he got old. And when he got old, he sort of got exposed to it. I mean, the 3 fights with Canelo, give him props for that. He made some money and he had a good run with Canelo, but he didn't beat Canelo the first time. People said, oh, he beat Canelo. I didn't beat Canelo the first time. It was, I think they called it a draw, but it was a close fight. So Triple G goes out with a whimper. At one point in time, he was the pound for pound best fighter in boxing. But, well, I mean, what have you done for me lately, Gennady Golovkin? He hasn't done a whole lot. What is he, 42-2? Never been stopped, 37 KOs. Last fight against Alvarez, that was, of course, in 2022, September of last year. But, he didn't show up for that fight. He showed up to get paid. He wanted to go back to 160 pounds to get paid. It was all a financial move by Gennady Golovkin, of course, going to 168 pounds and coming back down to 160. As far as his former trainer is concerned, Abel Sanchez, he is going out with a whimper. At one point in time, he was boxing. I mean, people wanted to see Triple G, and because he was Russian, a different ethnic look, this and that, to boxing, because boxing has been basically dominated by people of color, talking about black people, and of course Mexicans now in today's world, the world of boxing, without a doubt. Mexican fighters, Puerto Rican fighters, black fighters. Now Asian fighters are getting involved, which I think is really good because for the most part, Asians used to come over here and lose. Now we've got Asians that can win. So I mean, the boxing around the world has gotten a whole lot better, I think, quality-wise. It just has. I mean, South Africa's got some good fighters. Asia's got some good fighters. Europe's got some good fighters. Of course, Europe, the Russian bloc that's coming into boxing. Speaking of the Russian bloc, of course, the world light heavyweight champion, 19-0, 19 knockouts, Artur Beterbiev. His fight with Callum Smith is off. He's got an injury, but I'm telling you, that guy, there's a reason why Canelo didn't want to fight him at 175. He instead went after Dmitry Bivol. Of course, Bivol, the WBA 175-pound champion. He was talking about Canelo this week. He said, Canelo talked all that smack about wanting to have a rematch. It was in his heart. He was beating on his Mexican and macho chest, all that kind of good stuff. He never wanted the rematch. They never entered any serious negotiations for the rematch. So bottom line is, what you don't want, you don't get. Of course, now Canelo is going to take on, he's going to take on a Charlo. And I thought he was going to take on the 160-pound Charlo, but he's going to take on the 154-pound Charlo. As I said earlier, you move up 2 weight classes, you might get hurt. But then again, Charlo is going to be taller. He's going to be faster. I mean, you got to give him some props. And looking at that picture we got right now on WBC TV of Canelo, man, Canelo, that was post-fight. He looks fat. Look at his face. I mean, he looks fat. Weight Watchers. Is he going to Weight Watchers? He should be. But the bottom line is the 154-pound Charlo, I think, will do better than a whole lot of people think. Of course, the 160-pound Charlo at one point in time was thought to be a better fighter, but he evidently has a thirst problem. He's got some, other issues outside of the ring. And of course, he's weighing about 210 pounds right now, which is never good in the world of boxing. Not if you're a middleweight anyway. But pound for pound, I'm going to go with Noah Inoue. And who's number 2? Gervonta Davis. I mean, come on, man. He's got 29 fights, 27 knockouts. He's beating guys at 140. He's beating guys at 135. He's beating guys at 130. So basically, he deserves to be part of the mix. Of course, coming off that debacle with Ryan Garcia. And, Brent Carter, who will be on next week's show. Brent Carter is the lead singer of the Average White Band. They call him AWB. Of course, they had lots of hits back in the 70s and 80s, but he used to be with Tower of Power as well. But he's going to talk about the black fan base because if I talk about it, being 23% black, it doesn't count. But if somebody 100% black talks about it, it's different. Of course, I was talking about the fact that, when I promoted live boxing events, that I would only get 8 to 10% of the live actual paying crowd would be black. I mean, I'd have black fighters in the car, but yet they didn't draw. And of course, now black fighters are not as prolific they're just not happening as much as it used to be. They're going to baseball to a lesser extent, baseball, but basketball in the NFL, or as far as kicking ass, as far as African American athletes concerned. Now, I just got a text here about, well, you're blasting me because I thought Eno was maybe better than Crawford. Come on, it's like it's a subjective thing. I mean, come on, man, give me it's my opinion, okay? I'm not dogging Terrence Crawford. I think the guy from Omaha, Nebraska, is a bad dude without a doubt. I mean, pound for pound, he's like the number one or two guy. But to make him number one, I just don't know. I don't think you can do it based on that one fight with Earl Spence. I say, okay, well, look at the other work that he did. Come on. He's knocked everybody out of late. He has. Maybe I'm just not giving him the credit that I deserve. Maybe I've got a bone out for Terrence Crawford. Maybe I do. Because, maybe I'm not giving him the credit that he deserves. But I don't think he deserves a lot of credit for taking apart Earl Spence, not the way Earl Spence was last week. In fact, if you look at those guys at the weigh-in, it was like, who was deader? Earl Spence? I mean, he looked like a zombie. He looked like something from the Wax Museum. And then you had Bud Crawford, of course, Bud Crawford looked like a retired black bus driver. So Crawford was able to get his act together after the weigh-in. Spence wasn't, because Spence wasn't in the fight, ever. Straight up, this is Ring Talk.
Hey guys, this is Brian the Wine Punch Valoria. Stay tuned to WBC TV and FIT.
Mucha fuerza al término de cada episodio y en esta evidentemente siendo el hombre de casa.
I'm Frank Ripley, inventor of Frack Rock, the boxer's water bottle. You're watching WBC Live Channel, powered by Vive.
Make it 26 minutes past hour number 2 of Ring Talk Live Worldwide, coming to you from the Sports Byline Studios in the city of Bay, San Francisco, California. Somebody said to me, I'm neglecting David Benavidez as far as the top maybe pound-for-pound fighters. 27-0, 23 knockouts. Until he takes on Canelo Alvarez, this will put an asterisk next to that without a doubt. Now, We have a new segment we're starting on Ring Talk Live Worldwide and WBC TV. It's called One Round with Johnny Sig. Johnny Sig is John Signorella. I call him Sin City Sig. Of course, he's based in Las Vegas now. And he had some time with the great Sean Porter about 3 or 4 months ago. Here's Johnny Sig with John Porter.
I'm joined with two-time welterweight champ, best-dressed boxer and athlete in the world, undisputed, Mr. Sean Porter.
Wearing a nice suit that definitely shows my character and the figure that I got for it, you know. So, but no, I enjoy it.
Your tie game is second to none. Do you do your own ties? Because I can't tie a tie to save my life.
And this is a true story. I learned how to tie a tie in 8th grade. We had to wear nice shirt and tie on game day, playing basketball, and tutorial on how to tie a tie. And so I was paying attention, but by the time I had gotten home, I couldn't remember exactly what he had showed. And so it's like it was, and I can't remember his name, but it was my grade teacher's way, along with what I always say, the Porter way, and it's become this big thick knot that everyone is envious of, and because of that, I don't show anybody how to do that bow.
If there was any one fighter you could face nowadays, you know, I know you're retired, rightfully so, and you've had a great career. Who would you want to face and why?
I admired Tim Bradley, and
yes.
At one point in time, I thought that there was no better fight for me, no more competitive fight for me in the sport of boxing than Timothy Bradley. Obviously, that fight never happened, but I think if there was any fight I would have wanted to have had before retiring, it probably is Timothy Bradley. We'll go to commentary, then back to boxing.
How did you get to that? Like, I mean, you're so good at it. You're a natural.
Tell you what, man. I actually got my first chance to do live commentary on Spike TV in 2015. Obviously, being connected to PBC gave me the big opportunity that I've gotten with Fox. But when I had my first opportunity, I went back to my room that night and I said, "Man, I love it. I can't wait to just do this and nothing else." And you know, I think that's really my passion to do commentary, and also I think the savviness that I have in terms of understanding what I need to do to prepare for a night of commentary. I think that's what's got me to the level that I'm on now, doing commentary. But I do, man. I think that is something that I've always wanted to do.
Much love and respect, bro.
And I appreciate the interview today.
Of course, talking about Sean Porter, Sean Showtime Porter with Johnny Sig, 31-4, got stopped that one fight, of course, his retirement fight, 17 KOs. If anything he lacked in boxing was probably a little bit of power, but of course he lost his last fight by stoppage to TKO in 10 to the aforementioned Terrence Crawford, of course, but he came close to beating Earl Spence. It was a split decision on that one. Of course, one judge thought he won 115, 112, and the reason why I'm going with that judge is that it was Larry Hazard Jr. Of course, Larry Hazard Sr., I think, is the finest referee that's ever been involved in the sport of boxing. Of course, he was the head of the New Jersey State Athletic Commission for a long time, but he was a world-class referee. And I'll never forget when Tommy the Duke Morrison was getting beat up by Ray Mercer. And I just watched the fight in which a fatality took place, and David Gonzalez and Nino. Anyway, bottom line is I just watched a fatality take place in San Jose, California, like 3 or 4 weeks before. So I'm watching this fight, and Ray Mercer's got Morrison up against ropes. He hit him like 35 or 40 times. There was enough time for me to run from the 10th row to the front to the ring and scream across the ring at Larry Hazard to stop the fight. That's how much time there was. Of course, I don't think Morrison was ever the same. Of course, Tommy the Duke Morrison, may he rest in peace. And somebody said to me the other day, what did he die of? Who cares? Who cares what he died of? I think he died of AIDS, but that was related. I don't think maybe people say to me, well, how did he get AIDS? How do I know? He could have got it through sex, could have got it through needles, because he definitely did some steroids or performance enhancing drugs without a doubt. But pound for pound, at one point in time, Morrison could crack. I mean, he really was. He was exciting. Of course, the nephew or something like that of the great John Wayne. Anyway, bottom line is, at one point in time, Morrison was hot. And I thought that Morrison, of course, had a chance to capture a whole lot more than just the boxing world, because in the end, we're talking about race. And the fact that he was blonde haired and blue eyed and had a good look to him the whole 9 yards. I mean, his demographics were unlimited, okay? But his conditioning and his ability weren't unlimited. His punching power was there, without a doubt. I mean, he could punch. Tommy Duke Morrison could punch, but he didn't catch all that well either. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide, your inside look at the world of boxing and MMA. A little text here. Sean Porter. Yeah, Sean Porter does a great job as far as his analyzation is concerned. Of course, he's a guy who just talked about having to when he first did that in 2015, he went back to his room and he was excited. I mean, he was like, his mind was blown. But he's good at it. Andre Ward is probably one of the better guys, but Andre Ward has a problem with scoring. Outside of scoring, Andre Ward's a great analyst. But when it comes to scoring, listen, Andre, it's simple math. But Olympic gold medalist, 2004, of course, a guy that went undefeated as a professional, and I think undefeated as an amateur, because I told you about that one fight that he lost over at King's Gym in Oakland, California. Of course, Marsha King told me, I showed up late to the card, in the amateur card, so I showed up late, and Marsha's going to me, she was almost in tears. Andre lost. I say, what? Andre what? She goes, he's the man. Anyway, Andre was being lauded when he was 10, 11, 12 years old, like he's as something boxing great. And of course, in 2004, he decided he was going to fight 178 pounds. He was a 165-pound claimant in the Olympic trials, but he flipped a coin with somebody. He said, you know what? One of the Durrell brothers said, Andre Durrell, he said, you know what? Whoever loses this coin toss fights at 178, and the loser fights at 165. He lost the coin toss. He fought at 178. He was at a severe size disadvantage. I mean, I'm telling you, man, size matters in two things: pornography and combat sports, especially amateur sports. But anyway, but the bottom line is, the Polish fighter, I think that's who, Polish or Romanian, but he was much bigger than Andre, and Andre licked him like a stamp. Of course, he won the gold medal. Gary Radnich of Channel 4 fame here in San Francisco, KMBR fame as well. Of course, he ragged me on the air one time. He said to me that I was shilling for Andre Ward. You don't listen. Andre Ward has so much ability. You didn't have to shill for Andre Ward. I mean, he had one maybe shaky fight. The first fight with Kovalev, he came back. He stopped Kovalev in the rematch. Talk about Sergey Kovalev, the former light heavyweight champion. So outside of that, every fighter has a rugged fight, or maybe a fight that's, he didn't look as good as you would think he would look. But he came back in that rematch and just mugged Kovalev. Kovalev's never been the same after that beating. He mugged him without a doubt. Now back to the pound for pound thing. I'm not going to go there as far as the best woman pound for pound in the world of boxing is concerned, because I really don't study women's boxing that close. But I think Amanda Serrano definitely deserves to be, if they're not the number one or the number two person. Of course, when the Katie Taylor fight, she beat Katie Taylor handily. And last night I heard on that television broadcast, the Jake Paul, Nate Diaz broadcast, I think it was on the Zone, is that they anointed Katie Taylor as the greatest female boxer of all time. I mean, holy cow, you guys jumping the gun here? I mean, not that Clarissa Shields doesn't deserve a mention. I mean, I'm not a Clarissa Shields fan. She can't punch. She can't punch, but she's got a little bit of class now. Before she had none. Now she's got class. She lost that fight. She showed she was humble without a doubt. And of course, she wants a rematch. But as far as the greatest fighter pound for pound in the world of women's boxing, I guess you have to go back to the fact that the coal miner's daughter did it all for everybody. I mean, yeah, there were people like Lady Tiger back in the 60s and the 70s, this and that. And they were sort of like freak shows. Boxing for females was like a freak show back in the 70s and the 80s. And then came along Christy Martin. Of course, Christy Martin, Don King was slick enough to pay her not the biggest money in the world, but they made her a semi-main event on Julio Cesar Chavez cards, Mike Tyson cards, things like that. So she got plenty of exposure, made lots of money, of course. And I think at one point in time, she was like the face of female boxing. She just was. And people wanted to see Christy Martin fight. They did. It wasn't like, oh, man, it's chick boxing, women. No. She was like, and then she was must-watch TV without a doubt. Now, her and Lucia Riker, that fight never happened. I think Lucia Riker was probably the best female fighter of all time. I think she lost one fight, and that was in her life. I think she lost that to a man. Yeah, that's how good she was. She only lost to a man, Lucia Riker. Of course, she was a MMA fighter, a boxer as well. And she had a rumored affair, am I going to say this? Yes, with the Goldfather, Emmanuel Stewart. While he was training her, evidently they had, allegedly, I said that right, allegedly? Yeah. I got the guy in the other room checking me. Bailey's checking me here. Allegedly she had an affair with Emmanuel Stewart, of course, while he was training her. Of course, you never do that. I mean, you just don't. I mean, so I tell you what, as a private investigator, here's a good one. Some lady tried to hit on me a couple of months ago, and I mean, really, really hit on me, right? You don't combine that. You don't do something with a client. You just can't. It's like taboo. You just can't do it. It's like a law, a code of ethics. A lawyer can't sleep with his client either. Straight up, neither can a PI. You are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide. You're inside looking at the world of boxing and MMA. After the break, of course, we'll bring in Jim Stinson. He is the autograph Guru, King. I mean, he's got all these fighters together, all these different athletes together, all these different famous people together. We'll ask him about the top 10 photo signings he's ever had. Of course, that and more today on Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Your inside look in the world of boxing and MMA coming to you on WBC TV. Of course, coming to you from the Sports Byline Studios in the City by the Bay, San Francisco, California. Stay tuned. Jim Stinson after the break.
¿Qué pasa, hermanito?
¿Ya o qué? ¿Cómo andas?
Pues sí, ya estoy listo para boxear contigo.
Presento a los otros dos sparring, Luis Torres de Moreno de Sonora y Eduardo Martínez, dos grandes prospectos también, 18-0. ¿Cuánto llevas con? 11-1.
Isaac Pitbull Cruz tuvo un entrenamiento público para los medios de comunicación en su campamento de preparación para su pelea contra Giovanni Cabrera, peleador estadounidense invicto, que será una verdadera prueba para el Pitbull, que ha tenido 10 meses fuera del ring. La pelea será en la arena T-Mobile de Las Vegas, bajo la cartelera de Errol Spence contra Terence Crawford. Pero Isaac no es ajeno a los grandes escenarios y se prepara a fondo para este compromiso. Siempre con el mapa futuro presente, ante posibilidades como Ryan García, la revancha contra Gervonta Davis e incluso Vasily Lomachenko. Pero hoy sus puños se preparan para Giovanni Cabrera y en su mente no existe el fracaso.
I'm Frank Ripley, inventor of Frackwell, the boxer's water bottle. You're watching WBC Live Channel, powered by Vive.
$2.9. The guitar, Mr. Jerry Cortez, of course, Tower of Power. Check them out, towerofpower.com. They do the sounds for us and have for the past like 15 or 20 years. Straight up, you are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide, emanating from the Sports Byline Studios in the City by the Bay, of course, coming to you on live on VTV and WBC TV as well. Now we take it, I think he's in Southern California. This guy's like a gypsy. He's like the Ernest Hemingway. That's the closest guy. And are you the Ernest Hemingway of today's world now? I'm talking about Jim Stinson. Are you?
No, the false praise is almost like no praise, but I love Hemingway.
Yeah, and I think we're really dating ourselves, aren't we?
Yes, sir. And by the way, thanks for having me. Enjoy the show.
Okay, Jim, tell me what you do. I mean, autograph sessions, and that's how I sort of got hip to you. Ron Marshall told me, hey, this guy Jim Stinson's got all these celebs getting together, boxing celebrities and real celebrities and things like that, and they get together for autograph sessions. And talk to me about that. What is your business?
Well, I've since it started in the '80s, and I still do it today. But I buy and sell vintage autographs, documents, almost exclusively sports, but some entertainment. From turn of the century on to, I'd say, probably the 1960s. And I started to do it in the early 80s. And if you recall, the card show phenomenon was pretty strong then. And I was doing the baseball card shows, and everybody was buying card shows or baseball cards. And they would have a celebrity signing guest. And I noticed that, as a draw. And I noticed that the guests started getting more attention than the cards. And I realized at that time that there was still a lot of famous athletes that were either getting on in age or couldn't attend or were out of the country. So I got this crazy idea that I'd track them down and pay them to sign a certain amount of items, advertise in advance, and then sell via mail order and trade shows.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. What do you think was the most significant signing you've ever had? And go through your top 2 or 3 for me.
Oh, gee.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
It's always the ones that got away that haunt me.
Let's talk about those.
Well, the one that got away that really bugs me was Marlon Brando, but that's a whole nother story. He never signed autographs. He was kind of a quirky guy. He would go out in public, but it was very nasty to people. And I just finished a signing with Mickey Rooney, and his agent told me, he says, I can line you up with anybody you want.
Mike Horn?
And Brando, I'm sorry?
Who's his agent? Mike Horn?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
At that time was Bob, a fellow by the name of Bob Case. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame.
I had the wrong name there. Bob Case. So I'll keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, he said, anybody in Hollywood, he says, let me know. Well, I knew that Brando didn't sign autographs. And I said, yeah, Marlon Brando. And he said, no problem. And we talked about money. And he took me aside and he said, look, he says, obviously you're going to have to pay more than, I don't want Mickey to hear this, but you're going to have to pay more than him. I said, how much? He said, how much you want to pay? I said, $1 million. And he almost fell down. He says, geez, he goes, well, I didn't have $1 million, but I knew that in pre-sales, in advertising, and backers, I'd be able to generate it because Brando had never done a signing. And his autograph then, when he was alive, was selling for well over $1,000. Okay. So we submitted the paper. He says, well, that's got to go through an attorney. He said, I do know a guy that has lunch with him every Wednesday that he's known going back to the 50s. And so he got back with me and he said something to the effect that he wanted it in writing and to have my attorney send papers to his attorney, and we'd go from there. So at that point, I'm thinking there's a chance. And about 2 weeks later, I got a call from him. He said, you sitting down? I said, I know what the answer is. He said he doesn't want to do it. And he says, I even offered to counter. He saw a counter offer. He says, no, I just don't want to do it.
Well, listen, if he wasn't rich, he'd be nutty, but he was eccentric. Since he was rich, he was eccentric.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, I never got to meet him, but I wish I had. And the only clause was that whenever I would do the signings, they would always be in person. I'd be there to witness them and, of course, document it with a photograph and the exact date and time that it was signed. So there was always a witness to the signing. In answer to your questions, the ones that I did accomplish that were probably the toughest was Teofilo Stevenson in Cuba, the gold medalist.
Why? Because he was drunk?
Yeah, and he wanted to kill me. and
He was
and Carlos Monzon.
Jim, he was a bad drunk. Teofilo was a bad drunk, wasn't he?
Oh my gosh! I heard the stories before I got there. Yeah. But the guy was listed at like 6'5", but I mean, in person he looked 8 feet tall, and he had fists like hams. And I was told to get there early, and I'd already made arrangements. He wanted a bunch of Nike stuff and name brand stuff for his friends, and I got to his house, and there was always 20, 30 people in his house. And I got to his house, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and he had a big water glass full of rum. And his eyes already had started to look like headlights or taillights. And he told me he got about halfway done, and he says, "Leave the photos here." He says, "And I'll sign the rest of them. You can come back and get them later." And he just got up and left the room. So I can't leave him there. I mean, there's a house full of people. Who knows who's going to sign him, or if he's even going to sign him. So I just picked him up and left, and went back an hour later, and the house is like eerily quiet. I mean, you could hear a pin drop, and everybody in the house is looking at me like they want to kill me. I have no idea what went on. So Stevenson, now by then I'm by the back patio, like 2 flights downstairs. And he comes out and stands on the top stair, and he goes, "You!" And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And then I see my buddy, who was his neighbor. He starts walking backwards towards the door, and Stevenson looks like the Empire State Building, and I can see he's got his fists clenched. I found out afterwards that what happened was after I left, he went looking for the photos to sign them. And he couldn't find them, and he thought somebody in the house stole them. So he was accusing everybody in the house of being a thief. So when I came back in the house with the photos, everybody hated me.
Is there an autograph of Fidel Castro available? Question mark.
Yeah, there are. He's another one that I tried to do a signing with, but that was, of course, impossible.
Okay. What about you got either the Kennedys, Bobby or John JFK?
Those are two of the. I've had them before. I'm not a collector per se anymore. I buy and sell. I've had both of them before. They're both pretty tough. You have to be careful because both of them were notorious for using auto pen machines and secretaries.
Like Joe DiMaggio, a lot of the autographs he signed did he sign them himself, or did somebody else sign them?
Early on, he would sign, if you caught him in person, through the mail. His sister signed for many years, but they're easy to tell the difference. His sister signed for many years, and then he started to sign right before, I'd say probably early 80s, right before the card show thing took off. And he would sign for free through the mail, and he quit that after about a year. And then he was charging big bucks. He made more money signing autographs at baseball card shows than he ever did playing baseball.
But but at one point in time, he had like $350 to get his signature. I think. Am I right?
Well, in the beginning, I mean, you could get a Mickey Mantle autograph. I mean, at first autographs for a lot of those guys at the shows, at the trade shows and everything were free.
Yeah.
And then they started charging a nominal fee, and the most expensive ones were DiMaggio, Mantle, and Ted Williams. And back in those days, they were $25 for an autograph. And I don't know what the promoters were paying them. And eventually, the prices had shot up to they got up to $50, $100, $150, $250, and they were being paid $150,000 to sign autographs for a weekend. So
what about Willie Mays? Willie Mays is a hot autograph?
Never as much as the big three, the most popular ones, the biggest draws at the shows were always Mantle, DiMaggio, and Williams.
Because, Willie Mays wasn't number one here in San Francisco. Willie McCovey was. McCovey was the most loved Giant ever. Mays just wasn't up. Maybe Mays in the top 5, but Mays was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, he was. I met him at a trade show. In fact, I had a lot of things for him to sign, and he was. I mean, he was not a pleasant person.
No.
But I remember standing in front of him, thinking to myself, I might just be standing next to the greatest baseball player that ever lived.
Well, you know what's funny is that when I was a kid, he ignored me for an autograph. When I was a cop, he treated me like gold in an elevator. So I've had two face-to-face interactions with him. The first one didn't go good as well. I said, "Can you sign my autograph?" He just ignored me. He just basically, I said it 2 or 3 times, he ignored me. And then when I'm only like 8 or 9 years old. When I realized he was ignoring me, that sort of hurt my feelings.
Yes. Well, Mantle did the same thing to me when we were kids. We'd go to Yankee Stadium, and Mantle wouldn't even wave at us. And he was playing first base at the time. It was the end of his career. And then we'd stake out all the entrances and exits, and he wouldn't sign at all. But later on, it was kind of like the reverse thing. I met him at a trade show, and of course, he was being paid money, but he signed autographs at the trade show.
Last question for Jim Stinson. What's the most valuable signature in boxing?
In boxing, probably Marvin Hart. He held the title briefly after Jeffries had retired.
Okay.
And Jeffries designated 2 guys to fight for the title, and Hart was one of them, and he won. So technically, he's part of the lineal heavyweight group. And super rare autograph. He died fairly young and a long time ago, and almost none exist. I know of only like 2 or 3.
Okay, how does somebody get involved with Stinson? Get in contact with Stinson Sports? You guys are on eBay?
No, I got my own website. I buy and sell through my website, and I'm constantly updating it.
And what's the website?
Daily. It's Stinson Sports, StinSonSports.com.
Man, I thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. You've always been a blast. I remember back in the day we had a few drinks, but that's another day, another generation. I wish you the very best, my brother. You take good care.
Thank you very much. All the best to you as well.
Jim Stinson, Mr. Autograph on Ring Talk Live Worldwide.
Hey guys, this is Brian the Wine Punch Valoria. Stay tuned to WBC TV and FIT.
Hi, I'm Karthik Satyanarayan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wildlife SOS. You can help save India's wildlife by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also like, comment, and share this video. Thank you.
The breast of truth stands forward. The gaze of truth is straight. Truth has neither fear nor doubt. Truth has patience to wait. The words of truth are touching. The voice of truth is deep. The law of truth is simple. All you sow, you reap. The soul of truth is flaming. The heart of truth is warm. The mind of truth is clear and firm through rain and storm. Facts are only its shadow. Truth stands above all sin. Great be the battle of life. Truth in the end shall win. The image of truth is the cross. Wisdom's message is its rod. The sign of truth is Christ, and the soul of truth is God. Life of truth is eternal. Immortal is its past. Power of truth shall endure. Truth shall hold to the last. That's a masterpiece.
I told you, one of the greatest orators of all time, and certainly of the 20th century, without a doubt. Ring Talk Live Worldwide, of course, continues. This is hour number 2. If you're joining us for the very first time today, don't forget Ring Talk comes to you 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday and Sunday, right on these same channels. Now, Dillian White's out as an opponent for Anthony Joshua. Joshua, the 2012 Olympic gold medalist, turned out to be a fraud. 6'7", can't fight. Can't believe that. If I was 6'7", I'd still be fighting. But 6'7", couldn't fight, couldn't lick a stamp, wet his tongue. And the Dillian White fight was a rematch. Dillian White tested positive for Flintstone vitamins, aka performance-enhancing drugs or steroids. So we wish Anthony Joshua the very best of luck. No, we don't. We just wish Anthony Joshua would just go away. I mean, it makes room for some other heavyweights. Anyway, August the 12th, he's supposed to go on the zone. He'll find a substitute opponent. Now, August the 12th as well, ESPN, next Saturday night, Emmanuel Navarrete, WBO junior lightweight champion, 130 pounds, taking on Oscar Valdez, the former two-time Mexican Olympian. Of course, I think he's once beaten. I think he lost that fight to Shakur Stevens. Hadn't lost to anybody else, but Shakur spanked him. I mean, just spanked him for like the entire fight. Anyway, bottom line is that fight's going down August the 12th on ESPN. Now, today, Ring Talk Live Worldwide is the production of the Sports Byline Broadcast. My producer is the impeccable one, Bailey Peck. Of course, we want to thank the people bound in Dallas, Texas, working this thing as far as the VTV concerned. Of course, talk about Daniela and John Jacobin. They are a great pair, without a doubt. I want to thank the WBC, the World Boxing Council. Until next time, my name is Pedro Fernandez. Keep your hands up, keep your chin down. Most importantly, keep your butt off the canvas of life. Don't forget, Ring Talk Live Worldwide on YouTube.com. Straight up, this has been Ring Talk. Thank you so much for spending your time with me.
I got to make it right for everyone concerned.